here back from 2 of the 3 trips I have planned. I'm home for like 2 days and then I'm leaving again. But being stuck on airplanes means that I have time to read. And this is the book I was stuck with, literally, while traveling on this last trip. So what is it? It's The Ancestor by Danielle Trussoni. I found this book at a writer's conference. I was at the conference with a friend and we both thought it sounded interesting, so we both bought a copy and it was kind of like a buddy read. We have yet to compare notes, but I think we have similar feelings for this book, just based on initial texts between us about it. But the book sounded really interesting. I love a good gothic novel, and this sounded like that. I'm going to read the back to you. It says, after a DNA test reveals that Alberta Burt Monte is the sole heir of a wealthy noble family in the Italian Alps, she leaves New York to visit the family estate, Montebianco Castle, a centuries-old compound isolated in the mountains. What appeared to be a fairy tale inheritance, however, soon turns into a nightmare as Bert begins to uncover the dark legacy of her family, the truth about the abandoned village at the base of the castle, the whispers of stolen children, and the rumors of a legendary monster in the mountains. So, yeah. That all sounds really good, really intriguing. And okay, so we start with Bert living in like upstate New York, a town called Milton. I don't even know if that's a real town. I doubt it, but she is in the process of like a trial separation from her husband after a series of, and content warning, because infertility and miscarriages are a big part of this story, so we may be discussing it to some extent. But she's had a series of miscarriages, and it's kind of taken a toll on their marriage. I get the sense that Bert is in her late 20s, maybe early 30s, possibly. It's hard to tell. She comes from, this town has basically a lot of Italian immigrants. So she comes from an Italian family that's lived there. She's like the 3rd generation. And so is her husband, Luca. The families have kind of isolated Bert's family for some reason. The other Italian families don't really like Bert's family. She never really kind of noticed, but like it gets pointed out to her. Didn't you notice that the other families shunned you? You weren't like invited to participate in certain things or whatever. And she's like, oh yeah, I guess I never really thought it. I'm like, I feel like you might have noticed that as a kid when you're being left out of things. She's an only child, so it's not like she was over at home just having a happy, insular family life, but okay. Anyway, the book starts with her getting a letter in Italian that she can't read. So she takes it to her husband, who runs a bar, and she's like, can you read it? And he's like, well, not really, but Nonna can read it. Take it to her. So that's his grandmother, who never really liked Bert because, again, she came from the family that all the other Italian families hated. And Nonna's like, oh, it says that you've inherited, you're a Montebianco. So Bert's name in America is just Monte, M-O-N-T-E, because her grandfather had, shortened it, as so many immigrants do. So, but it turns out like the Montebiancos are a really old established family that goes back to like the 13th century. And then a sharply dressed lawyer shows up and says, did you get our letter? We need to take you to Italy to, finalize the transfer of the estate, and you're the final heir. And they had found her through a DNA test she'd taken a while back. She had taken the DNA test because for some reason she thought the results might help explain why she can't seem to have kids. She invites Luca to go with her because she's kind of like, I don't want to go alone. And even though we're in this trial separation, and he goes, neither of them have passports, but the lawyer has produced Italian passports for them because he had managed to push through citizenship for her based on her, DNA and family, and a spousal citizenship for Luca. They go to stay at a very small town. They have a very nice time. They're reconnecting, Bert and Luca. And then they have this very minor disagreement, let's say. He basically reveals, yeah, didn't you notice? This is the point at which Luca's like, didn't you notice no other families liked you? And she's hurt. And she's like, I need to take a walk. I need to walk this off. So Luca goes back to the hotel, and Bert wanders around this little Italian town. And she goes into a bookstore and finds a book on monsters of the Alps, and it includes the little village that her family and all the other little families, the Italian families that had moved to, Milton, came from. This abandoned, it's now fully abandoned, right? And how the abominable snowman lives there and, steals children. It turned out one of Nana's brothers had disappeared, and apparently a lot of children had disappeared from this town, and eventually the town got sick of it and everybody left because their goats and stuff were being killed, and they were like, this isn't worth it's cold all the time. Our livestock is getting slaughtered. Our kids are disappearing. Maybe it's time to leave. I'm like, it took you how many centuries to decide on this? I don't know. Weird, but okay. While she's out, the lawyer, Enzo, turns up and says, oh, Luca went home. He packed up and left. And he went back to New York. And Bert's just kind of like, oh, gee, I guess he was really mad, or, I don't know. Her reaction just feels very mild. And even though she does try to text him and call him and he's not answering her, she's just kind of shrugging it off in a way. And then, and then they take a helicopter up to the castle, which is, inaccessible half of the year except by helicopter because of the snow. The roads are impassable, and it's December and going into January when this is taking place, so they drop her via the helicopter. And then of course from here there may be spoilers if you want to read this. I don't recommend it, but if you want to read it and not know more than that, stop now. She gets dropped by the helicopter. She gets attacked by one of the caretaker's dogs because somehow he didn't know she was coming and hadn't restrained the hellhounds, basically. And so now she's got a scar on her face from where the dog jumps on her, bit her cheek and all this stuff. She meets the housekeeper Greta, who's very, I don't know, unfriendly. She meets a great aunt that she didn't realize was still alive, but who's only her great aunt by marriage, which is why she can't inherit the castle. And she finds out that in the northeast tower, there's someone, up there. And eventually she finds out that it's her great-grandmother, who is 102 or something at this point. This is all set in 2017, I think. It was published in 2020. But yeah, so she's got this this great-grandmother who's been hidden away because she's disfigured and hideous and strange, and the whole thing devolves into being about how Bert has this ancestor who mated with one of these ice people who live up in the mountains, who are basically some cross between the White Walkers in Game of Thrones and yetis, I guess. I don't know. Some kind of very primitive version of mankind. Not as far back as Cro-Magnon, but somewhere in the Neanderthal range of things. It is a tribe that is slowly dying out, but Bert's great-grandmother has been helping them by supplying them with medicines and modern things like, clothes and pots and pans and, trying to help them live, because she's actually descended from them and she has a lot of their genetic things, because they have, like, they're covered in, like, very fine hair. It's very, like, white blonde hair. They have white blonde hair on their heads and very blue eyes, and they tend to have, their heads are a little bit bigger, their brows are more prominent, and they have these very sharp teeth for just kind of biting into animals and stuff. And the whole thing is just, besides the whole thing being ridiculous, the main character is just so incredibly like, it's all told in first person from Bert's point of view, and she gives you all of her logic and her reasons for doing the things she does, and even still, you're just like, why though? Because Greta had a son when she moved up to the castle. She had actually come to the castle having, like, kidnapped her son, basically. She was German. She had left her husband. She had taken her son with her, without a custody agreement or anything like that. And then the son disappears from the castle, just like all the children from the village had been disappearing, right? And somehow Bert just believes the story that the little boy named Joseph, his dad must have come from Germany and taken him back. And I'm like, I'm sorry. First of all, the castle is walled, right? It's got a big walled courtyard, very thick wooden doors that stay locked. Sal, the caretaker, has the keys. And there are these attack dogs who attack anybody who's a stranger. And you somehow believe that the most likely story for where Joseph went, this 6-year-old boy, is that his dad came from Germany, somehow got in, and took the boy home. Like, never mind the impassable roads and this, okay, sure. That's what she considered. I'm like, even though children have been disappearing from this valley for centuries, you think that is the most likely thing that happened there. Okay, sure. All right. And then, like, she kind of just forgets about her husband until finally one day she, in a panic, when she realizes the helicopter's not coming back for her in the 6 days like it was supposed to, that she's really been abandoned in this castle. There's one phone in the castle, one rotary phone. And the only number she has memorized is the phone number for the bar in Milton that her husband owns. So she calls him, and he is there. Like, you kind of are led to believe something bad must have happened to Luca, and they're covering it up. But no, he's back in Milton at his bar, and she calls him, and she's like, you got to get me out of here. And he's like, well, I've been trying to call Enzo, the lawyer, but he hasn't answered me. So don't worry. We'll figure this out. We'll come get you, whatever. And then we immediately forget about Luca again for a long passage of time. Until he and his dad turn up frozen to death somewhere outside the castle. And it's like, what? And then there are these cryptozoologists. There are these cryptozoologists who are looking for the missing link kind of thing. And at some point, Bert, gets out of the castle, goes down to the village because she's seen smoke coming out of one of the house chimneys down there. She's like, somebody's down there. And it is these cryptozoologists who have been searching for the tribe. One of them had witnessed one of the Icemen, as they end up being called, and is going back to try and find more evidence and so on and so forth. And Bert thinks they're going to help her, but really they want to capture her because they realize she's part of the family and part of this genetic whatever. It just got worse and worse. At some point, Bert goes up and lives with the ice people for a while, and she calls them the ice men, but obviously there are also women. And she, she's like, oh, I felt for the first time like I belong, because she has the same weird feet as them, even though she doesn't have like the body hair or whatever. She has the blue eyes and the pale hair and the weird feet. And she's starting to learn their language a little bit and all this stuff. And it looked for a moment like she was going to have a romance with one of them, but she didn't really. And it even looked like there might be a polyamory thing going to happen, but that didn't either. And in the meantime, where this all ends up, it isn't good. It's so convoluted and so, I don't know, there's like an ick factor to the way Bert handles things. There's just, I don't know. You know how there are a lot of old stories about women who were captured and or, as children raised within the tribe, and then they go and kind of reintegrate into society, but they're kind of between the way they would distinguish it back then, right? They were like, oh, well, she doesn't fully belong in polite society, but she's also not really, a Native American, so you're kind of, it kind of lands there, and it feels very weird. And also, it's clear the author did a lot of research, but none of it ends up being very interesting, even though it's like leaned on very heavily with these cryptozoologists, and there's a guy at the castle named Basil who has been cataloging all the books and trying to figure out the family genealogy. It's just not good. It's just not good. And I mean, the writing style didn't bother me. I know I read some reviews after I finished, and some people were like, I hate the way it's written. And the writing style didn't bother me, but because it's from Bert's point of view, some of that bothered me, because she's just, I don't know, she's so dippy. And yet she's presented as being very logical and very strong, not just physically, but in a mental and emotional way. And you're just like, I don't think that's true. I wouldn't necessarily say that the choices she ends up making in the end are strong, good choices. Okay, I'll tell you this. She ends up taking one of the children from the tribe and going off to Paris to live in Paris and raise this little girl as her own, because they are genetically related. And she names the child Isabel, because that's one of the family names. And she's like, it's getting harder and harder to go out with Isabel, because the way she looks and her, her natural instincts or whatever, right? First of all, when Isabel was born, because Bert was there when Isabel was born, they say that she doesn't have a lot. She has the blue eyes, but they don't say that she has the weird physical things, except maybe the feet. I don't know. So I'm like, what is it that you need to hide exactly? But also, go old Victorian. Make her wear a veil. You know how they used to have the hats with the veils? Like, just have her do that. It doesn't have to be that big a deal. I don't know. I just felt like she was turning it into, like, more of a thing than it needed to be. Because Isabel's, like, 3 or 4 by the end of the book, and not that I agree with her just stealing a child either. I guess she tries to smooth it over by saying, well, I did go and talk to the child's father, and it seemed to be that they made some kind of deal that she could keep the baby if she continued to have the family estate send supplies to the tribe or whatever. The tribe has to stop stealing children, though, because that's part of the agreement. And if she finds out they're out there stealing children again, because they were told by one of Bert's ancestors who lived with the tribe and was the reason that Bert is descended from this tribe, is because he basically had a relationship with one of the tribe people. And he told the tribe, you need broader genetic material within your tribe if you want to survive. You can't keep interbreeding. So they started stealing children to, raise as tribe members and hopefully expand their tribe, which hasn't worked, by the way, because a lot of the kids they steal end up dying because they can't live in the cold of the mountains. So it's like, yeah, that's not working out too well for you, is it? So Bert's very upset when she realizes this is what's been happening, and she's like, no, you gotta stop stealing children. And even though that's kind of a death sentence for the tribe, she's gonna keep sending them supplies and medicines and things like that, and I don't know how long they can survive, because basically they have a very high infant mortality rate. So without someone there who knows how to treat a lot of the physical ailments, somebody there to give these kids vaccinations or something, I don't know that just having medicine is going to actually help them. You know what I mean? I'm probably thinking too much about this, but it was just, again, I was stuck on a plane, 5 hours one way, 6 hours the other. And so it gave me a lot of time to read this and then just be mad about it, which is why I'm going on about it a little bit. But anyway, for me, it's 1.5 stars, but on Goodreads, I couldn't even bring myself to round it up to 2. It is a 1-star read. It is not good. It's not a good book. Sorry. So if you like it, go in the comments and tell me why. Tell me what you love about this book. Like, it had elements of, like, Frankenstein, and, I don't know, there were things about it where I was like, well, this just feels a lot like this or that, and then kind of cobbled together, and it should have been things that I enjoyed, but there was just something overall about it. The main character, some of her decision-making, definitely the way things end, that I don't know, didn't work for me. Didn't at all. So anyway, that is The Ancestor by Danielle Trussoni. If you've read it, let me know. If you've read something like this, but it's not this bad, let me know that too. I love a good Gothic book. And so I would very much like to find more great Gothic books to read, but I find a lot of them just aren't that good. It reminded me, what was that one I read earlier this year that I also didn't like? The one where a woman inherits a house, but it's in Louisiana, and there's all this supernatural stuff going on in the town. That one was awful too. These are books that should be exactly my kind of thing, and they're all failing me. They're all failing me. Maybe my standards are too high for this kind of fiction. Honestly, it is probably me. It's probably me more than the books, because clearly these books have readership. I'm not in that subset or whatever. So yeah, I am also reading Dead Lions, which is the second Slow Horses book. I'm literally only 30 pages in or so we'll see how it goes. But I am off again in a couple days for Disneyland. It'll be fun. We're going to celebrate both mine and my husband's birthdays, because they both fall within a couple weeks of each other, and we just decided, hey, let's do this. And then I intend to stay home for a good long while, because all of this travel, as much as I enjoy traveling, all of this travel is wearing me out. And I am ready to relax at home. And also, I really need to get back to writing Changers 2, which has kind of fallen by the wayside with everything else going on. If you haven't read Manifesting Destiny, which is the first book in Changers, it is on sale for 99 cents for a limited time at the time that this is being posted. So go check that out. I will leave a link in the description for the ebook. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free anyway. But yeah, and so probably not another video for, the next week. Although I'll see if I can take some short videos while we're at Disney, maybe, just to give you a sense of where we are. And until next time, take care.